Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. This lecture is for BBA 8. The subject is International Business and Trade. This is our lecture number 13, which is delivered by Ms. Zahra Arif. Today, in this lecture, we will discuss about the chapter, which is chapter number 1, that what is globalization? What is globalization? You have probably heard the term globalization before, but what does it mean? Globalization can be defined as the shift towards a more integrated and independent world economy. In other words, the world is moving away from self-contained national economies toward an interdependent, integrated global system. What does it mean? Well, think for a moment about your day so far. Perhaps you woke up this morning in the bed made by Sweden's IKEA, got dressed in a shirt made by Guatemala, and American Levi's jeans that were produced in China. After putting on your Brazilian made shoes and drinking an Italian style latte, you drove to work in your Japanese Nissan that was manufactured in Tensei. On the way to your job for a company that is headquartered in France but has operation in the US, you might have talked to your friend on your Nokia cell phone that was designed in Finland about getting together late for Spanish style tapas and Corona beer from Mexico. As you can see, your day has already been filled with the effects of globalization. You can think globalization in terms of the globalization of markets and the globalization of production. Now, what is the globalization of market? The globalization of markets refer to the merging of historically distinct and separate national markets into one huge global marketplace. As trade barriers between countries fall, companies like IKEA, Sony, and Coca-Cola are able to sell their products to a global market where consumers are more and more alike. In fact, in many industries, it is no longer meaningful to talk about the German market or the American market. Instead, there is just one global market. Keep in mind, though, that the globalization of the market doesn't mean that the consumers are the same everywhere. The differences between markets no longer exist. National markets are still very relevant, challenging companies to develop a different marketing strategies and operating procedures. For example, as you will see in the closing case, General Electric recognizes the importance of responding to local market differences and so has been working to develop a more international organization that is managed by the individuals from around the world who understand local customers. We will talk about more these market differences in later chapters. What is making it easier to sell internationally? Falling trade barriers for one thing, and as we already mentioned, that the convergence of consumer taste and the preferences. Keep in mind that companies benefit from these global opportunities. They also promote even greater globalization by offering the same basic product worldwide. The second facet of globalization, the globalization of production. It refers to the sourcing of goods and services from location around the globe to take advantage of national differences in the cost and quality of factory production like labor, land, and capital. Companies can hope that by sourcing and producing their products in optimal location, whereas in the world that might be, they will be able to be better compete against their rivals. Boeing, for example, outsources about 65% of its 787 crafts to the foreign companies. About 35% of the jets will be made by three Japanese companies. Boeing believes that this strategy allows it to use the best suppliers in the world, an advantage that will help it win market share over its rival Airbus Industries. Even healthcare can be outsourced today. Hospitals now routinely send X-ray via internet to be read in India, and some insurance companies even recommend having certain procedures conducted in foreign countries. You can learn more about this phenomena in the opening case of the globalization of America healthcare in your textbook. Moving forward. Now, why do we need global institutions? Several global institutions have emerged to manage, regulate, and police the global market and to promote the establishment of multinational treaties to govern the global business system. We will talk in more detail about these institutions in the later chapters. But now, let us take a quick look at some of them. The key institutions affecting international business are General Agreement of Trade and Tariff, or we say it GATT, the World Trade Organization, WTO, International Monetary Fund, IMF, World Bank, and the United Nations, or we say as UN. Let's take a brief look at each one of the beginning with the World Trade Organization and its predecessor, the GATT, that is General Agreement on Tariff and Trade. The World Trade Organization is responsible for policing in the world trading system and making sure that members adhere the trade treaties. The 153 nations that account for about 97% of the world's trade are all WTO members. So the organization is very influential in working towards an open business system where goods can cross national borders without barriers to trade and investment. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, the World Bank were created in 1944. The goal of the International Monetary Fund is to maintain order in the international monetary system, and as we will see in the later chapter, the International Monetary Fund is a significant player in the global economy. The World Bank promotes economic development by making loans to cash-strapped nations wishing to make significant infrastructure improvements like building dams or roads. The United Nations was established in 1945. The United Nations has a goal to preserve peace through international cooperation, to cooperate in solving problems and in promoting respect for human rights, and to be center for harmonizing the actions of nations. Nearly every country in the world belongs to the United Nations and accepts its basic principles of international relations. What is driving globalization? Two macro factors are important. First, the decline in the trade and investment barriers since World War II, and the second, technological change, specifically dramatic improvements in communication, information processing, and transportation technologies. Let us talk about each of these. First, though, let's go over a couple of definitions. International trade. International trade occurs when a firm exports goods or services to consumer in another country. Foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment occur when a firm invests resources in a business activities outside its home country. At the end of the World War II, many advanced nations committed to removing barriers that prevented the free flow of goods, services, and capital between countries. They formalized the process through a general agreement on tariff and trade. Have they been successful? Yes. Since 1950, average tariffs have fallen significantly and are now at just 4%. Foreign direct investment is also rising as countries open their market to the firm. You can see in this table that the declining trend and investment barriers, average tariff rates on manufactured product as a percentage of value. Here you can see how average tariff rates on manufactured products have dropped significantly over time. Look, in 1913, France rate was 21% and now 2008 it is 3.9%. Similarly, in Japan it was 30% and now it is 3.9%. In United States it was 44% and now it is 3.9%. So you may clearly see that it has dropped significantly over time. What does globalization mean for the firms? Well, low barriers to trade and investment mean that firms can see the world as their market rather than a single country. Low trade and investment barriers also mean that firms can locate production facilities in optimal location. Wherever in the world that might be, production and sales now take place in multiple markets, creating interdependency between countries for goods and services. We can also look at the role of technological change in globalization of the market. Major advances in communication, information processing, and transportation technology have made what had been possibilities into tangible realities. The cost of global communication has fallen, for example, because advances in the telecommunications and information processing help firms coordinate and control global organizations at a fraction of what it might have cost even a decade ago. The microprocessors that facilitates high power, low cost computing in perhaps the most important of these developments. Dell, for example, takes advantage of these innovations to control its globally dispersed production system. When a consumer submits an order via the company's website, it is immediately transmitted to the suppliers of the various components whenever they are located in the world. Suppliers have real-time access to Dell's order flows and can then just adjust their production accordingly. Dell uses inexpensive air freight to transport its product to meet demand as needed. The company maintains a customer service operation in India where English speaking personnel handle calls from the US. Indeed, the internet has made it possible for even small companies to play a role in the global economy. Yet, less than 20 years ago, this technology didn't even exist. Growth in internet users has gone from fewer than 1 million users in 1990 to more than 1.6 billion users in 2006. Improvement in transportation, such as containerization and the development of super freighters, have also facilitated the growth of globalization. The time it takes people and the products to get from one place to another has shrunk, as has the cost. Ecuador has been able to capitalize on falling transportation costs to become a global supplier of roses. Similarly, television networks like MTV and CNN are received in many countries and are contributing to the development of a sort of global culture that transcends national borders. Now, this is a small quiz that which of these are not concerned of anti-globalization protesters? A is globalization raising consumer income. B is globalization contributes to environmental degradation. C is globalization is causing a loss of manufacturing jobs in developing countries. And D is globalization implies a loss of national sovereignty. So the correct answer is A, that is globalization raises consumer income. Thank you. Allah Hafiz.